go to Truth Funders and check it out. Their website it's still pre-launch, so you can get in on the ground floor. If you have a project that you want to support, you want to fund, like good old William Zabel needs funding to get his book and he needs someone to edit the book for him, right? You can put up a Truth Funder crowdfunding, crowdsource funding thing there. It's all ground. Yeah, it's all ground floor, man. I can hook you up with the CEO of the company. Okay, it's brand new, and they're going to be going on Coast to Coast and stuff like that. They're going to be going on Jimmy Church. They're going to be going on John B. Wells, and we're going to be hearing a lot of stuff from them. So now we're joined by Mike Gray. You there, Mike?
Yeah, I'm here. Hey.
Okay, you're there. Okay, great. Now, what I was hoping is let's I know you got questions. Mike always has really good questions. But what I'm hoping is, because we've reached the point of the night where we're just pulling our hair out, or at least some of us are. William Zabel doesn't have that much hair. But some of us are pulling our hair. Maybe that's how he wound up this way, because, it's just, what is going on? What went on in Columbine? What do you think happened? Because I've heard you say also, too, you felt it was a satanic sacrifice.
Oh, yes. Yeah, the Satanism was and still is a very big thing at Columbine. There are teachers involved. There are school district employees involved at the upper school district level. And there are Columbine kids involved, and there's parents involved. One house I would in, the mother admits she was a witch, and that, her daughter went to Columbine, was doing, different kinds of satanic, they had all these little incantations that they had found on the internet, and they were doing this stuff not only at home, but they were doing it on school property. Sometimes they were even doing it in class. The teacher, if it was a class where they broke up into project groups, one boy told me, he says this group, instead of doing their project, they would start doing these little incantations and all this stuff, and the teacher didn't even care, never said a word about it.
Wow.
I believe that, by the way.
Okay, but because, I've experienced here in a preschool we had here, and they were all kinds of weird stuff going on over there,
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I unfortunately ran into a group like that when I was in college, and these people were never convicted, but they believed that they were involved in this stuff up in northeastern Colorado, where they were finding animals dead and things like that, and they were in the same dorm I was when I was in college, and they were going all over eastern Colorado doing this, sacrificing animals on altars. They actually found a couple of children dead, but they were never able to link it to them, but, they did think they were doing the animals. So, this stuff, there's people that don't just sit around and say, hey, I believe in Satan, that's the end of it. There's people that take this stuff way too seriously, and they go out and do some really crazy and horrible things.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with the book The Ultimate Evil by Maury Terry.
I've heard of it, but I've never read it.
Yeah, okay, well, you're familiar with the story, though. I'm actually involved in a secret group with Maury Terry and all these guys, first-hand witnesses from Son of Sam and stuff like that. And I've seen the police reports. I've seen photographs, stuff that's never been published either in his books or out in the media and stuff like that. So it's just amazing what's out there. Okay, but give us, without me interrupting you, okay, from start to finish, what do you think took place there at Columbine?
This shooting was meant as an elimination of not just the children, but the entire school. When their plans for popping off their bombs went wrong, then they decided that they were going to have to go in and take out the individual kids who were a problem. But there has been a lot of undercurrent snitches in both the Denver Police Department and Jefferson County will tell you that there was a lot of child sexual abuse in that area of Jefferson County in the 90s. There were allegations, even at Columbine High School, of some of the children being sexually abused going back to when they were in elementary school. Jefferson County has a horrible track record of dealing with pedophiles and people who are into like alternative type cult things like Satanism. A girl got murdered up on Devil's Peak, which if you look down from Devil's Peak, you can see Columbine High School. This man was not supposed to have been released from the Jefferson County Jail. He was supposed to have been transferred to Canyon City Prison. And they don't know. The lady that was the sheriff's deputy said the paperwork was correct, but somehow they let this murderer who had already been convicted walk right out the door. He went home, got his car. He found this 13-year-old girl, promised her booze and drugs, took her up to Devil's Point, raped her, and killed her. And there's been a number of cases in Jefferson County where this has happened, where these pedophiles and these sadists somehow managed to walk out of the jail instead of being transferred up to the state prisons. Going back to the late 80s, yeah.
I got one in another state where the guy actually was serving a prison sentence. They let him out. He was an informant. They let him out, and he committed a murder with a gun that came out of the police evidence locker.
That doesn't surprise me. I've got lots of news articles on stories like that where somehow guns make it out of the police lockup and end up in the hands of criminals on the street. Imagine that.
Yeah, right. Okay, don't let me interrupt you, though, man. Give us the whole, because there's a lot of good stuff.
Okay,
yeah.
So here's my take on this. There are too many kids in that school who show very severe signs of psychological trauma, not just Harrison Klebold or, some jock who claims the Trenchcoat Mafia smacked him or whatever. But there are some serious psychological problems with a lot of these kids, and it actually came out after the shooting, that a lot of these kids were told you're going to go to therapy, or you're going to be taken out of the home by CPS. My theory is that Columbine, and there is evidence for this in a lot of your declassified government documents on mind control. I believe that was a mind control hub. I believe that they were creating Manchurian candidates. They were creating undercover couriers using high school kids. This has come out in other areas of the country where the CIA and the military have been caught using kids that are not even enlisted in the military or in the CIA to do their work overseas. I believe that is exactly what they did, and something went wrong. Harrison Klebold may have been what went wrong, and somebody decided it was time to do a mop-up operation. And I think that's what Columbine was. They needed to get rid of that school, and they needed to get rid of everyone in it.
Wow. And then how long was the planning in that? Because we know these guys were fooling around at the pizza place and stuff like that for a year before 2 years.
The original investigators that were hired by the parents, because Jeffco wouldn't go too deep into this, neither would the FBI, but investigators for the parents found that the first death threats against Columbine High School go back to 1992. That was the first time, and somebody had called in a bomb threat then and was threatening to destroy the school, and it was another case when they tried to track the number, they couldn't find out where it went.
Wow, and back in 92 it was really easy to trace back numbers back in those days. Forget that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was way before all this stuff nowadays, all the trouble with finding numbers. That's interesting. Okay, so
I can tell you, too, that this was admitted to in the documents. You can probably even find this on the Internet, since some students complained about this. Excuse me again. There was one teacher by the name of Judy Greco who was a Wiccan witch, and she ran the theater department, and she was the one that had the Trenchcoat Mafia come in and handle all the theater productions. They did the lighting, they did the sound, but she was actually putting students in a trance, and this came out in the Governor's Review Commission that parents were complaining that she was putting children in a trance. Now, guess what she had in the theater department that only people that study mind control would know anything about?
What?
She had a Leda machine.
I've never heard of that. What is that?
A Leda machine was developed by a company in California in the 60s for hypnosis, and it uses audio and visual to put you into a trance. Investigators found this thing in the theater department when they were going in after the SWAT operation was over with. They found this machine. They thought it was a bomb. So they called in the teacher and asked, when did this get in here? And she goes, that's not a bomb. She goes, that's a machine that I use for hypnotism. A lot of kids like to be hypnotized. And so she goes, that's the machine I use. She goes, I bought it from a company in California, and the school district allowed me to bring it in. And it's like, whoa, she admitted to this.
Wait, did she admit to using it for hypnotizing the kids?
Yeah, and some of the kids admitted that they liked being hypnotized because they could do their parts in the theatrical plays better if they were hypnotized. That's in their statements to investigators, and a couple of the students actually spoke before the governor's review commission because she was really in a lot of trouble because she is one of the teachers that locked her kids in the classrooms and then ran out of the building and left her kids locked in the classroom.
Oh, my God. All right, listen, we're joined by Mike Ray. Mike, you got any questions?
Yeah, to what point did the boys, Klebold and Harris, do you feel they had any part in this and their parents? Do you feel they were just dupes?
Yeah.
Were they framed, basically?
Yeah, they were framed. They were dupes and they were framed, but they were created patsies like Lee Harvey Oswald. If you want to commit a crime and you're a government agent, you can't be found with a gun in your hand by the local responding cops, so you create little Lee Harvey Oswalds. And these two boys have all the patterns of being set up. And I know the man who trained them with guns and bought them alcohol. I've talked to him from across the room. The Denver police had to keep me separate from him because he was coming at me and I was going at him. He is very well known in Jefferson County. He actually works undercover for the ATF, but he masquerades as a West Metro firefighter. And then when I outed him, he left West Metro and went down to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where, according to the police chief in Albuquerque, he's playing with kids around there and training them in gun usage. So yeah, they were created. Oh yeah.
Is that the fireman guy?
Yeah, that's a fireman guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about the parents? I mean, how they found all kinds of explosives, right, at both of the homes?
Yeah, well, the parents down there will tell you that they believe, and I believe it too, that both the Klebolds and the Harrises' fathers were training the boys on how to use the bombs. There's no doubt about that, because Wayne Harris was in special operations in the Air Force. He was responsible for training crews for covert missions over Russia and China, and one of his expertise was teaching these guys how to avoid detection if they got shot down. So he was a real expert.
But wait, that's what I'm saying. In other words, the fathers weren't involved.
Yes.
Oh, they were?
Yes.
So they willingly sacrificed their kids?
Well, sure. I mean, my own uncle could tell you this story about people that he met in the Marines when they were in Vietnam. They were running all kinds of dark and covert operations over there, and some of these high-ranking officers convinced their sons to go ahead and use the draft and join, don't run to Canada, and they put their own sons in these black operations, which were drug-running operations, and killed their own children. It's not unusual for families of the military who are officer class and have a lot of money to have this theology, this kind of philosophy, or call it a political viewpoint, that they should sacrifice their children for the good of the country. I mean, this is well documented in numerous books. Yeah.
Well,
so,
because
yes.
I remember I used to listen to Rush Limbaugh back in the day, and he read off the thing that the one of the mothers was after the event, like the next day, was in a hair salon saying, "I can't believe he did this." And Rush Limbaugh even said, "What is she doing in a hair salon?" You know, you would think the parents would be in hiding.
Yeah, that would be Eric Harris's mom. She, they never really talked officially publicly, the parents did, other than to apologize. But when they were in public, both mothers would make a lot of really weird offhanded comments. And I remember that comment that she said she, quote, couldn't believe her son did this. But that's not the only comments that she has made. She's made several others, but when she's questioned about them, she denies she made them, because she makes sure that the news cameras and investigators are nowhere near her when she makes them.
Right, yeah.
Wait, which mother was that?
Eric Harris's mom.
Okay.
And I can tell you, I know for sure that Thomas Klebold, Dylan Klebold's dad, was involved, because I've got video of him on the school property dressed like an FBI agent.
Wow.
Wait a minute. Who did the brother?
No, the dad, Thomas Klebold. He works for the FBI. He's not a geologist like they tried to say in the public documents, because I went to the firm downtown that he claimed to work for, and they had heard the comment, but they said he never worked for them. So anyways, the guy I told you about earlier, Michael Corbett, who ran a radio internet show talking about conspiracies, He was a stringer for BBC, and he got me this news footage that he had took. He was up close and personal of this green minivan leaving the property, and this guy turns around and looks right at the camera. On the passenger side, he's got the FBI uniform on. He's got an M16 down by the door, and it's Thomas Klebold. And the reason I know it's Thomas Klebold is because before that video got released to me, I was downtown when the lawsuits were still in federal court, and Thomas and Susan Klebold were walking out. And I walked up, and she wouldn't talk to anybody, but I shook his hand and offered my condolences, and I said, you know, I'm sorry for what your son did and your loss and what you're going through. And he said, thank you. And I looked him right in the eyes, and that was Thomas Klebold in that minivan.
Okay, and that's not the one that was in the driveway. That's the other kid's father.
Right. The other kid's father was in the driveway, Wayne Harris.
Right. Okay. All right. So Klebold was there working the case with the FBI. Okay, that makes sense because I'll tell you what happened. I met a guy, I'm a private investigator, so I go to conferences and stuff like that, and I met a guy who told me he was involved in this case. And the thing what he told me right away was, he says, Ed, he says that the FBI in charge, his own kids were at the school. So they took control of this case right away. Now, you're telling me also, too, that Harris's father, or Klebold or Harris, which one?
Klebold.
So Klebold's father was an FBI agent there at the scene, like in a SWAT outfit?
Yep. Now get this. When the investigators went to the Klebold home that day, when they found out Klebold was involved, Thomas Klebold was not there. And and Susan Klebold would not answer questions as to where he was because they wanted to know where he was. And I was suspicious and it was the Denver Police Department that went to the Klebold's home, not Jefferson County. And they kept pushing her very hard on that. They wanted to know where he was, and she would not answer them.
But then on the other hand, they're getting away with that, though.
Yeah. I mean, I've got video of the guy. I've had parents look at that video and identify him as Thomas Klebold. These parents know the Klebolds and have met Thomas Klebold, and they said, yeah, that's him. What in the world is he doing dressed like an FBI agent? They were freaked when they saw that video.
Okay. Let me ask you this. Now, okay. Well, no, you know what? We just pulled in Christian Wallace. He's a host on InfoNation on CJ Mars Radio. He's an old buddy of mine. Calls in all the time with good questions. Mike, you're getting a lot of roughage over there with your mic. You know, a lot of noise like that. So try and mute up.
Oh, sorry.
Or control yourself, whatever you're doing over there, man. Okay. But Chris Wallace, do you have a question for William Isabel before I hit him with some stuff?
Well, if you have some stuff and you want to go ahead with it, really good information, William. I have just a few, follow-ups that I can throw in at any time.
No, go ahead. Shoot. Do it now.
Well, I was just curious about, of course, the most famous whitewash of the whole thing was the Michael Moore movie, Bowling Columbine. And what do you think, just some of the high points of that, or of where he changed some things, and what some of the what the overall agenda of that film was, do you think, in your opinion?
Well, Michael Moore was working with the anti-gun crowd here in Denver, the Million Mom March, and those people. And, Michael Moore always claims to be this guy trying to expose corruption and that, but, he's more of the, it's guns and drugs that are responsible for everything, or, it's always, something small that he thinks is the problem, and he always misses the big issue. And for him, I always think that with him, it's just to gain traction with the mainstream media, because he's considered kind of aloof and a buffoon with them. And I think he twists things in the case of Columbine so that he can create this almost like a National Lampoon's version of Columbine, so that he can kind of joke his way into Hollywood and the mainstream media. I think that's what he's doing.
Sure. And also, didn't he sort of set it in cast it as like a celebrity type of a thing and spun it in a direction towards Marilyn Manson, which, was, and then he also went in another celebrity direction with Dick Clark. and with the Welfare to Work program, because he said, he tried to put another angle where he then was browbeating Charlton Heston with the picture of the little girl, and he took it in a whole other direction. But yeah, it was definitely geared towards an anti-gun thing, and he used misleading pictures from websites that weren't actual websites that he was talking about. He cherry-picked certain facts and things. And it was a beautiful propaganda piece, but that movie was the one that sort of propelled him from the Roger and Me movie that he had made prior to that, where he was supposed to be all up for the working man. I don't want to take it off the topic of Columbine, but that was the seminal movie where then, he kind of, really got known in the public sphere, and people really thought that movie was factual. And I just wanted to know where the two really diverged. And I think that's really important because, he was interviewing all kinds of, celebrities and stuff. That movie was, at the time, being shown in schools and in different classes. I know this for a fact, different places that were probation offices, therapists, and people were using that movie. And it was kind of like a propaganda piece.
Yeah.
And
let me throw something in, because I know for a fact that Michael Moore, his security team, is the old back when I knew about it, were Blackwater guys, the same Blackwater guys that were protecting Bremer, the Ambassador Bremer in Iraq after the invasion. The same guys. That's the team he had guarding him. When he's talking about 9/11, it's the same guys that were pretty much behind it.
And then he jumped out of the 9/11 Truth Movement. As soon as Obama was in office, he jumped out. So he also spun it in a partisan direction.
But William, what about? Because I heard you tell a story once about how one of the Columbine kids wrote a letter to he sent him an email to Michael Moore.
I'm trying to think of what that was, because I got a note on that and it's buried somewhere. And I'm trying to remember if it was Michael Moore or not. It might have been Michael Moore. I have to go back and look at that. I know that, several students were very, very angry about some of these people in the media that were, swerving Columbine over to this, kids that couldn't score with the high school cheerleaders, so they got mad and went postal. And there were several of them, and I'm trying to remember that comment because it was relayed to me by a student, and I can't remember if it was Michael Moore or not. I know there was one of them, and it could have been the other guy, that guy that always makes everyone mad. What's his name? The guy that said that Harrison Klebold should have had sex with the girls instead of shooting them.
Howard Stern.
Howard Stern. Now, I do know that I have an email from a kid who sent me the email that he had sent to Howard Stern. Now, that may be the one, but I definitely think there was something about Moore, and I'm trying to remember, and I think that was that kid that I've discussed, Evan Long, and that may be the one. If it is, it's buried in the documents here. I've got 6 banker boxes full of emails from students and everything. So I can't really answer to that yet because I've got to go back and look at that and see who that was from and who he was referencing, because there's actually a couple of them, and I know I've got like 5 or 6 emails from students who really ripped Howard Stern apart, with his comments. But I do know there was a thing about Michael Moore, and if I remember right, I think the comment that was that they made about him and to him, and the reason they wrote it, if I remember right, it was because he said, well, the banks are giving out, free automatic weapons and shotguns and belt-fed weapons. That was some bank up in Montana, and they were giving away these antique shotguns if you open a bank account. But a sheriff was there, and you had to be cleared and all that. And I think they ripped him over that because he compared it to Columbine, and I think he tried to say, well, the teachers must have been handing out guns or something. I will have to look that one up. And to be sure that I'm right about that one.
Okay. Christian, any other questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear on, how he entered the scene. And, because now his name is synonymous with Columbine. I mean, everybody's going to go to that film and try to think that it's some sort of factual account of what happened. And it's done in a humorous way. It's edited very well. The other thing is, I just wanted to know where the facts in the actual film diverge. That's all. I just wanted to know when he came in the scene and how he got involved, and then where the reality of the situation begins and where his movie diverges, where the two kind of, bifurcate.
Okay, I didn't get to watch the whole movie, just bits and pieces of it. It was given to me by a friend, and I watched a little bit of it. I can't stand Michael Moore, so I was never able to get through the whole thing. But I do know the take that he has is very typical of the mainstream media. The drugs, he, and let me back up, how he got involved was the Million Mom March. The lady who organized that knew Columbine parent Donna Taylor, and Donna Taylor wanted him to come in and get her whole take and the take what became the official story, but it wasn't even the official story the way Jefferson County countered it. It was, Harrison Klebold, and they had these guns, they were angry, and it's so easy to get guns. And this is where he diverges from the truth, because in actuality, the Harrison Klebold couldn't even get a popsicle on their own. These kids were mentally off from day one. There were several people that got them their guns. So Michael Moore's view that, well, the guns were everywhere in Jefferson County, and you should see how easy it is to get guns. Jefferson County has their own county ordinances on guns, and if Michael Moore had bothered to do his research, he would have found out that, boy, you get caught in Jefferson County and you're a teenager and you have anything more than a hunting rifle or a shotgun, you get caught with a .45 or a 9 or any other handgun. I mean, their local ordinances are even worse than state law. And I couldn't believe that Michael Moore could put together such a movie where he diverged this off on, like the kids picked the gun up at Walmart or some teacher gave it to him.
Right.
And then his take on the drugs, obviously Michael Moore's never done research into who finances these drugs. I mean, I know Donna Taylor had talked to Michael Moore on more than one occasion, and I know she was pretty much, pushing how this, this documentary, this movie, how this should go. And I've warned people to be very careful with her because her agenda is money. She's broke, she's divorced, she's homeless, her kid got shot, she has tons of medical bills. So she's going to go to Michael Moore with her view of Columbine. And the fact is that these drugs, if you go back and research them, the CIA financed these pharmaceutical companies. Why did Michael Moore go back to this? Why was it always he treated in his films these drugs as though, well, they're candy that the kids got from a teacher because they were acting out? I believe he's not even good enough to be called controlled opposition. He works for the government.
He's in on it. Yeah, he's in on it. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's where, and to answer Christian's question, that's where he diverges, is by making a joke out of the gun and the drug issue when he didn't go back far enough for this particular shooting, because every shooting is different, and he lopped all of this in together. And he never talked to anybody outside of Donna Taylor and the Million Mom March. If he had bothered to talk to the kids down there, the cops, he could have put together a movie and a documentary that would have blown everyone away. I mean, the government would have had to have gotten rid of him.
Also, William, there was a case around the same time. Sorry, Mike. I'll forget if I don't say it.
That's right.
There was a case around the same time, Kipling Kinkle, that no one remembers. Are you familiar with that one?
Oh, yes. Very familiar.
Okay. Was that before or after?
That was before. I think that was 6 months before the Columbine shooting, I believe.
And there were some similarities with medications and such, and
he said he heard voices telling him to kill everybody.
He said the voice in my head. Yeah.
Well, Kip Kinkle was another one who had a parent in military intelligence, and where he did his shooting, there's a Lockheed facility not but 10 miles from where he did his shooting, and I have showed on my old website that no longer exists, and the new one that I'm putting up tonight, I'll show this. Lockheed Martin, right down there by Columbine, an engineer that works there created and patented in his own name, not Lockheed's name, an implant device for behavioral modification.
Right.
And if you go back and look at these shootings, you're going to find that maybe these kids are different in why they wanted to do it, but they all have commonalities, and that their schools are all near defense contracting plants. They have at least one parent in government service, either as a cop, federal agent, or military intelligence, and they all claim that they're hearing voices in their heads. And anybody who knows schizophrenia knows that these people are very unpredictable, but in the case of these school shooters, they're not unpredictable. They have a specific target, they have a specific agenda, and they have a specific time frame that they have to do this murder spree in. They're in a hurry. Now, what does that sound like? It sounds like to me somebody's telling them, you've got to go do this now.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and almost like they're being groomed from from birth, almost.
Yeah,
What about because Mike Gray posted some stuff today about Clinton's speech afterwards. Now, what about the memorial when they planted some trees or crosses or something on the that kind of stuff? You went to the memorial and you saw a bunch of cops with rifles and stuff.
Oh, these guys were military. These weren't even State Guard or National Guard. These were U.S. Army soldiers that lined the streets of the parade with fully loaded M16s pointed down at the ground, and they lined both sides of the street. I got photos of it, of these guys there, and parents were ticked, and they were also walking around in the crowd as Clinton and the others were speaking. And, of course, when I asked Jefferson County about it, they said, well, because so many high-ranking politicians were here, they needed security. Well, they don't do security that way. You know, I got a cousin who's an FBI agent. He knows people in the Secret Service. They don't do it that way. Their people will not be seen. Their people are hidden. They're in plain clothes, and they're hidden in locations where they can immediately get to anybody who tries to approach a politician.
And then it struck me as odd, too, is that Al Gore showed up to that wearing a black trench coat.
Yep.
No, there's no way.
Also the name Columbine or Columbia has deity, it's named after a deity or something.
Yeah, the goddess Columbia. Yeah, that's all over the place. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's also a poisonous flower, too.
Oh, really?
Columbine flower is poisonous. I looked it up on John Hopkins' website. It won't kill you, but if you get in the aroma from it, you can get sick and you can die if not treated carefully. So, yeah, nice flower to choose for the name of a school.
Yeah, very unusual. Yeah. Let me ask you a question. Now, there's a lot. All the websites, right, seem to have been shut down. That cover this story. Now what's the deal with Justin Tribble? Now, I know Justin Tribble.
He came up here, and him and I got together and worked on Columbine. And the thing about it was that when he decided to go to college for journalism, a woman showed up and said, I'll take over running your website. Don't worry about it while you're in school. I'll rearrange some things, put video here and there, and people send me stuff, I'll put it up. Don't worry about it. Well, she turned out to be a social worker for Jefferson County. And he went off to college. He gave up on Columbine. He started doing other things. And he contacted me about 2 years ago. And I don't know what happened, but they claimed that he threatened somebody at Columbine. He was trying to get an interview with somebody. This was long after all the kids had left there. I mean, none of the kids that were there in 99 were there when he supposedly threatened them. It was like 2005 or something like that. And supposedly he threatened this Columbine student over the internet, and they arrested him for it and charged him with it. And, immediately he dropped off the radar. And I hadn't heard from him until about 2013 when he told me, I'd been in trouble with the law. Somebody claimed I threatened a Columbine student, yada, yada, yada. And then he dropped off the radar again. I haven't heard from him since.
I have. Let me tell you something. Okay. I like him, okay? I like him. But
so do I, yeah.
Yeah. Well, he's a strange guy, though. But the thing is that you can't find anything on the Internet connecting him to Columbine anymore. Not even this arrest or this death threat you're talking about, this threat, whatever it is.
Right.
But you're familiar with that he did do a hoax, an online hoax, where he involving Joel Osteen?
No, I did not know about that.
Yeah, he made major news doing this hoax involving Joel Osteen, where he pretended to be Joel Osteen and said, hey, I'm Joel Osteen. I'm going to retire from the ministry because I think it's hypocritical. And he was actually on, they had him on, Dateline and stuff like that. He made a lot of press from this hoax, So then I didn't know about that, but there was another thing that came up about a year ago, right around this time, that this guy named Dr. Bill Weld came forward and claimed that he was involved with DARPA and that DARPA was using nanotechnology and contrails and stuff like that to poison the population and was going to kill off the population. And there were these leaked DARPA documents. And Dr. Bill Weld was supposedly from Las Vegas and was a doctor and a lawyer, both, and had offices and all stuff. So I heard about this, and I checked it out, and I investigated it. And who was behind this hoax? Justin Tribble.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah, and I called him up, I said, hey, Justin, it's me. And I caught him, doing it. He admitted it was him, and he was all for it, he was a hoaxer, And then when I had Alan Abel on my show, the notorious hoaxer. You familiar with him?
Not familiar with him, no.
Well, Alan Abel's a guy from the 70s and the 80s. He did all these hoaxes. He was on mostly in New York City, but he did all these big hoaxes. I can't think of any of them right now, but he was a funny guy, did hoaxes for a living, and so when I was having him on, I contacted Justin, and I said, hey, man, you're a hoaxer. You want to come on and have fun hoaxer and stuff like that, and he never got back to us. But it's just really, because I know Justin Tribble as a hoaxer. He did the Joel Osteen hoax, and he did the Dr. Bill Weld hoax, and I had no idea his connection to Columbine, and that he was so deeply involved in it, and it's entirely scrubbed from the internet.
Yeah, and I would have never thought that about him. He was a real serious, responsible guy when I met him.
Yeah, well, he has. When you call his phone number now, he has. He does this voice, this southern voice, where it's called Pretty Cheap Website Design or something like that, And this is Pretty Cheap Website Design, but that's him, man. And I had no idea that he was involved in Columbine at all.
Yeah. Yeah, he started out just collecting information on Columbine, and then he came up here for about a week, and we went around and talked to people and talked to students and things. And I noticed, he really never really did do much with the website. He just had a forum mostly, but he did have some links to documents. He had some video up there that I gave him and such like. And then he went off to college, and that was the last I heard of him.
Wow. Okay, very interesting. But it's a small world. That's in the small world department. Because when I heard you mention Justin Tribble, I said, whoa, I know Justin Tribble, but I had no idea he was connected to Columbine. Okay. So just fascinating, incredible stuff here.
Yeah, there are a lot of strange connections there.
Yeah, there really are.
Well, let's go. Yeah, what was that? I didn't hear you.
Well, I have a question.
Okay.
How long do you think that was planned?
I believe from the way that parents talk and some of the information that I got from Jefferson County that somebody was wanting to take that school out since at least 92, but the actual plot involving Harrison Klebold go back to when Dylan Klebold was at Governor's Ranch Elementary, and he was making threats then, and so was Eric Harris. And I can't remember where Eric Harris went to elementary school, but it was in 93, 94, or somewhere right in there, somewhere in that area, that these two began making threats against Columbine, and they had never been anywhere near that school before they went into it as high school students. So no one really knows why they would start threatening a school they'd never been anywhere near. It didn't make sense to anybody.
And
Wait a
Columbine
second.
happened.
Well, no, was that a school that they would have fed into?
Well, the thing about it was Eric Harris lived in the district and was eligible to go to Columbine High School, but where Dylan Klebold lived, he should have gone to Highlands Ranch. He was farther south, but instead his parents got him an exception to go to Columbine High School.
For what reason?
He was a gifted and talented student, according to his parents.
And Columbine was considered like a gifted school and had better grades and stuff than the local school?
Oh, they think that school is like Harvard University. You wouldn't believe the puffed up pride and arrogance. I mean, they will even tell you that Columbine is the #1 high school in America. That's what it's rated. It's not even #1 in Colorado. It's like number 15 in Colorado. But, I mean, it's just a weird false sense of pride. And a student that I talked to who was new there that semester, who got caught hiding under a table in the cafeteria, said, yeah, Bill, this is really weird. He says, I've never seen a high school that thinks it's such elite. He says, even their graduation rate is not that good. And those who do graduate, he says they have a very small number that actually go off to college. But he's the one that told me he was surprised at how many of the kids that walk out of that school, even with or without a high school diploma, end up in the military or law enforcement. He said it's a very high number. And he always thought that was strange. Yeah, he said that was very strange. He just couldn't figure out why this school was so special to everybody.
Wait, say that again. You said that a lot of kids graduate that school, go to law enforcement? In the military?
They go into law enforcement and they go in the military, and some of them end up in countries that they couldn't possibly go there as American citizens, like Iran. Now, you can visit Iran, but they follow you everywhere when you were in Iran. But 2 Columbine students were found way up in northern Iran, and I think it was 2005. Let's look at the news article here. In 2005, near a nuclear research facility taking pictures, and they were former Columbine students who were there in 1999 during the shooting.
They were hiding, right?
Yeah, right. Anybody here hiding their Iran.
Right, exactly.
They were. That's what their story was that they were backpacking through Iran, and you don't backpack through Iran. I'm sorry, not as an American citizen, anyway. And even Iranian citizens are not allowed up in that area where they were found, because that's where all the nuclear research facilities are. I mean, that whole area screams go away there. I mean, they've got their own drones that they fly over there. My cousin was telling me the kind of security they have around these facilities, and when he heard that these 2 were from Columbine and that they were taking pictures of a nuclear facility, he says, oh, man, not again. He just couldn't believe it.
Now, did we talk on the air, or was it off the air when we were talking about the shooting at the subway?
I don't remember now. I think we were having trouble at that time because that was that first half hour.
Right.
Was it that first half? Yeah.
See, that's why I hate talking here. But now, tell us about that, because the 2 of the students from Columbine later on were at Subway, and what happened there?
The subway, and this particular subway is right up the street from Columbine. It's about a block and a half to the south, and it's in the King Soopers parking lot right up against the curb. And Stephanie Hart and Nicholas Kunzelman were found dead, both with shotgun wounds, center mass, right in the chest. And that the bullets came through the windows. Whoever the suspects were never entered the store. The doors were locked. No money was missing. And they were both found dead behind the counter. Now, when the investigators began looking into it, they determined that the shooter had to have been on the roof of the King Soopers. So when I went over there, I got them to let me go up on the roof, and that was a very difficult shot to make. There's a tree in the way there and everything. Whoever did this was probably a professional, because that is a good yard-wise, I think 300 yards maybe, probably 900 feet to almost 1,000 feet, so that's about 300, 400 yards. from the King Supers to the subway. So that's a long distance for, some punk kid that just wants to take out a couple of kids working at a subway.
Yeah, now, what would be the motive for shooting? Was there ever any motive for shooting these kids at the subway?
Sure. Nicholas Kunzelman saw 3 shooters with face masks on, and he identified one of them as Joe Stair because he, quote, could see Joe Stair's blonde hair coming out of the back of his face mask on his head. And Stephanie Hart, her statement has never been released to the public. She only made a statement to the FBI, and once again, they classified it top secret and would not release it to Jeffco or the American public.
And I noticed also, too, that the cop, the detective investigating that case, said it's the only unsolved homicide he's ever had.
Yep. Yeah, I've got the news footage of him talking to the media. Yeah, he was very suspicious about that. He didn't like the connections between those 2 kids in Columbine. And you're going to find that there's a number of unsolved homicides around Columbine High School. Quite a number of them, actually.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I got them right here. I got a list of them. Yep. You had Anne Marie Hochhalter's mother. Anne Marie was shot outside the school. She was shot in the spine, and she was disabled for life. She's in a wheelchair. She told Jefferson County investigators and Denver police investigators that it was, quote, an adult who was dressed like a cop that shot her. That was her statement. Her mother goes into a gun shop later that year. She asked to see a .38 revolver. The guy behind the counter goes into the back room to answer a phone. She loads the .38 and shoots herself. Now, anybody who's ever been in a gun store knows that when you're showing a gun to somebody, you don't walk away, ever. Because I've talked to gun store owners. They don't walk away and leave somebody in the front of the store with a gun, whether it's loaded or not, while they go in the back room to answer a call. And I've always been a little bit suspicious because that gun store has been in trouble with the ATF, and the owner actually became an informant for the ATF a couple of years before Columbine. And I find it suspicious that she walks into a gun store where the guy who owns it, who's behind the counter, is an ATF snitch. He lets her have a gun. He goes into the back room. She shoots herself. And it turns out that she's the mother of a Columbine student who claims that a man dressed like a cop shot her daughter.
Wow.
Then you have Greg Barnes, who was a jock at Columbine High School. They claim that he hung himself in the basement of his parents' home, and his statement was never released to the public either. And in his case, and in the case of Kunzelman and Hart, their autopsies were never released to the public. Neither was Anne Marie Hochhalter's mother's autopsy released either. They claimed open case as the reason why they would not release the autopsies, because I talked to the coroner.
Yeah, it seems to be a pattern, too. They keep these cases open so they don't have to release stuff.
Mm-hmm. Then you have the Columbine student who joined the Marine Corps after Columbine. He saw one person shooting, but he says it wasn't Harris or Klebold, and he gets hit by friendly fire in Iraq in 2000. Yeah, he gets hit by friendly fire in 2000 in Iraq.
Okay, so we're coming to the end of the hour, to 8 o'clock, okay? Do you think you can stay a little longer, William, if you want?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay, now we'll be dropping a couple of stations. We'll be dropping Awake and Wolf Spirit, but we're going to be live on CJ Mars Radio, so you can go to the chat room over there and keep up with the show. And so why don't we do this? William, do you have anything you want to say? Because we're losing a big chunk of the audience, but we're still on live on the air, and also go in the archives on iHeartRadio and Spreaker and YouTube and stuff like that. So is there anything you want to leave this audience, final words?
Yeah, the final words I'd have for the audience that's dropping off is that in any event like this, you're never going to get the full truth either from the victims or from the government that investigates, simply because these events involve more than your Lee Harvey Oswald. Even if we took the additional shooters out of the equation, there are still parents, students, and law enforcement officers that knew about this shooting at least 2 years before it happened, and they knew that it was for real. They knew these kids were making bombs. They knew the Trenchcoat Mafia was entrenched down in Denver in the public schools down there. They knew that these kids were all working under the table. They were building bombs. So even if you get the other shooters out, you still have a guy that knew about this. You still have parents that knew about this. And the question from that is, why did none of these people act when they had a chance?
Yeah, gotcha, man. That is you're right, man. There's something way bigger going on here than's coming out. So we're here with William Zabel, the Columbine expert. I've always wanted to do a show about Columbine. We're going to be dropping a couple of stations, Wolf Spirit and Awake. They're all going to bed because they've been producing. But I'm going to work these guys like a workhorse. I'm going to keep working these guys for about another hour, half hour, as long as they want to hang out, and we'll do some stuff here. So I'm going to hang up on everybody, and then I'm going to call you guys back, okay? Because you have to drop all these other guys. And we have a nice 5-minute break here. Cindy's going to play some commercials. I'll be calling you guys back in a couple of minutes. So I want to thank William Zabel. We'll be right back with him for the after show. Mike Gray's going to be with us, and also to Fish and Wallace. I want to thank Wolf Spirit, JP, man. Thank you for helping out tonight. I want to thank over at Awake, Walking Turtle. Patty Walking Turtle. Patty, thank you so much. Hey, Patty, when do you want to come on real quick and plug your show? When's your show come on?
Okay. I'd just like to say hey to everybody out there. It's been a fantastic show. Thank you, William, and Christian and Michael. It's been an excellent show. And you can find me on the Awake Radio Network with Where the Wild Things Grow and Turtle Talk. Mondays at 5 and Saturdays at 3. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for helping out tonight, okay? So I'm going to call everybody back in about 2 minutes, okay?
Okay.
Okay.
You are listening to WCJV Digital Broadcasting, Youngstown, New York.
If you're looking for essential oils, stop by and check out Essentially Tammy on Facebook. She is Young Living Essential Oils Independent Distributor. These 100% therapeutic grade oils help support the body's natural functions. You can click on her website posted on Essentially Tammy, that's T-A-M-I, to see the current deals and check out the benefits of oils such as frankincense, joy, valor, lemon, thieves, panaway, and many more. Email Jocotami, that's Jocatami @yahoo.com, or call 352-239-8546. That's 352-239-8546. Hey, don't forget good old Amanda at Pacific West Bamboo. Pacific West Bamboo, 503-839-8126. You can reach her at demroots@oppermail.com. Pacific West Bamboo, your number one source for timber, construction, and craft-grade bamboo poles, plants, products, and more. They specialize in eco-friendly reclaimed wood products for the home and garden. They're located in Portland, Oregon, servicing the Northwest for over 10 years. They can be reached at 503-839-8126. That's 503-839-8126. Her Facebook page is Pacific West Bamboo. They can and do ship nationwide, and they're currently getting a new line of bamboo flooring, veneers, and laminates made from Guadawa bamboo, one of the world's strongest bamboos, grown and produced and manufactured in Central America using only economically and environmentally friendly practices and standards. Good old Mike Gray at infinityhomeplans.com.
Check out Infinity Home Plans and Design Services, your resource for 3D and 2D draftsman services. They offer a multitude of products, including stock home plans, 2D digital drawings, 3D models, renderings, and more. That's infinityhomeplans.com. Hey, don't forget emailrevealer.com. That's my website, emailrevealer.com. And we offer all different kinds of services. Current place of employment locate. Let's say you're trying to locate where your ex-husband or your ex-wife is working so you can collect on child support. You contact us, we can locate their place of employment for you and help you collect on that child support. Let's say you think that your husband or your wife is cheating on you. Give us their email address and we can trace it back to online dating websites and dating services. So we have a multitude of services on emailrevealer.com. Hey, don't forget the New World Mexican Women. Okay, now you just Google New World Mexican Women. You can find their book where they first describe their love letters to their men and their sons and their uncles and their brothers who have traveled from South America to North America to work as migrant workers. But the women down in this town there in Guerrero, Mexico, they want their men to come back. So they've written these beautiful love letters, and they've put them all in this beautiful coffee table book. First, the letters are written in Spanish, handwritten. You can see pictures of the people writing the books. And then it comes on after that, and it's typewritten in English. And then also, too, the second half of the book is teaching you how to make authentic Mexican jewelry from these New World Mexican women. You can find their book on Lulu.com. It's only $19, or you can download the digital edition for free. That's New World Mexican Women, and it's a two-part book, where first part is the love letters, and the second part is the making the handmade jewelry, the authentic Mexican jewelry. But you can also contact them, too, as well, if you want to get a deal on wholesale jewelry from Mexico, from these women.
Welcome back to the Opperman Report After Show. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. The show's brought to you by Audible.com, audibletrial.com, and also brought to you by TruthFunders.com. TruthFunders is a brand new company. It's coming out. It's a crowd-sharing, crowdsource funding, it's called, where they're funding, raising money for truth topics. People that are investigating conspiracy theories and stuff like that, like we're doing, and UFOs and paranormal and all that kind of stuff. They're anything that you would hear on the old Art Bell shows or that kind of stuff, that's the audience they're going for. So if you have a project you want to get funding for, go to truthfunders.com and sign up for their beta version, or go to their Facebook page tonight, Truthfunders, and give them a little like over there. Now, William, okay, now, right, as soon as we go off the air, you start talking. When we get all this information, I'm like, okay, hold it. But the first thing you wanted to talk about was the bombs.
Right.
Go ahead.
Right. The bombs, the issue with that really shook a lot of people up because when they began hearing about the types and the nature of bombs, it's obvious that there were simple pipe bombs interdispersed with much more sophisticated type bomb material and weaponry. SWAT officers actually at one point had to back other cops out of the building because they found bombs with, quote, military-style mercury switches on them. And that's in the SWAT documents. Then they actually show in their statements where they have a map of the school, and they put in where they found all these. Many of these devices were just found laying in the hallways. They were found up above in the ceiling where the broken ceiling tiles were, like either somebody threw them up there or placed them up there. But SWAT really got nailed hard when they got down to the kitchen, and they got into the kitchen, and they had been told by students there was a bomb in there, and they thought it was a small bomb. They didn't think it was anything big deal. They got in there, and they described this, and SWAT officers made it very clear that this thing appeared to them to be a, quote, fuel air bomb.
Oh, my God.
Yes. And Jefferson County Sheriff John Stone, who was sheriff at the time, actually had a picture taken with it. It is one of those propane tanks that roofers use on the roof of buildings to heat tar. It's about 5 feet tall. It's about 4 feet in diameter, and the top of it was modified and had some kind of aluminum box put over the top of it.
Get the hell out of here.
Yeah, and I've got the news footage and the still pictures of that, too. And I actually asked the sheriff, I said, excuse me, you said that they rushed the door with duffel bags. Do you really think that thing is going to fit in a duffel bag? And he says, I can't tell you how that got in there, because he says the ATF and the FBI will not release any information that they gained from fingerprints they took off of it, or where they traced the parts, or this device too. So he says, I can't tell you anything. And he says, at the time I made the comment about rushing the doors, I did not know about this device. But then that was illogical thinking on his point, because they also claimed that they rushed the doors with 25 propane tanks that weighed 30 pounds apiece, and they put them all in 2 duffel bags and rushed the doors. And everybody knows that's impossible. In fact, a bunch of kids out at the school where I was going to college actually tried this. They actually got a bunch of propane tanks like that, and they put them in duffel bags, and they timed themselves, and they couldn't even walk with them. They had to drag them on the ground. And they said there was no way you could do this. Not 1 or 2 people.
Yeah, there's no way. Yeah, that.
Well, not just that, not just at the school, but at the house. Didn't they say the garage was filled with? That's what I'm saying. You know, how the parents weren't indicted, that they didn't know this was going on.
Well, that's the media won't tell you this, and you have to go down to the community. You have to find this out, and unfortunately, our media does the usual. It's mainstream media. It's controlled by the government special interests. But you will find out that most of these parents are either former military intelligence or they are former or current federal law enforcement officers. Wayne Harris worked in a highly classified division at Plattsburgh Air Force Base back in the 70s and 80s. He trained B-52 pilots on what to do if they got shot down, and he was responsible for developing a program of where our pilots could fly over Russia and China, and the idea was to create radar evading techniques, not just radar, but the ability to fly through mountains. He was responsible for all that, and his military background before he went to Plattsburgh is all classified. After he gets out of Air Force, the Air Force, I think he didn't go to the Air Force Academy. He went to some Air Force college down in Texas. But after that, everything is classified till Plattsburgh, and then even Plattsburgh, there's nothing. And, of course, I already told you about Thomas Klebold. He's an FBI agent. You have all these kids whose parents are Denver cops, Jeffco cops.
Yeah.
This is what you would call professional courtesy. A kid whose parent is CIA or military intelligence does a really bad thing. All of the people who have that background smell a government operation, and they start circling the wagons. Unless you know people like that, and I do because my family comes from that background, these people are family. Just because you served back in Vietnam with some guy or back in Desert Storm, when it comes to military intelligence, these guys stick together. They are all family for the rest of their lives. And they will cover for each other even if one of them commits a crime down the road. They will cover for each other.
Even a crime like blowing up a school and killing hundreds of kids.
Yeah, because the FBI guy, his kids were there at the school. The FBI director in charge of this case, his own kids were best friends with the killers.
Right.
Now, remember, Dwayne Fusler was involved in Oklahoma City, Waco, Ruby Ridge, and the Montana Freeman standoff, And he agreed with Janet Reno when Janet Reno said that they had to kill the kids to save them. He said that the FBI, the ATF, and Marshall's office did exactly the right thing at Waco. So if this guy has no problem with seeing little children being run over by tanks, the agenda at Columbine could have been, like I said, mind control, trying to cover up mind control and child abuse and all this other stuff. Let me tell you something. With these guys in federal service, their job takes precedence over their children and their spouses. They have no trouble at all of sacrificing their own kids. My own cousin who's in the FBI said that if his kid was involved in something that involving the government and the government told him you're going to have to risk letting your child be killed, my cousin said he would do it. He said if it was national security and he felt it was patriotic, yeah, whatever.
Wow.
My own cousin said that.
That's that's why I know so many people that are like, I know a lot of people that are in the military and that, and it almost, they're brainwashed.
Well, sure. The U.S. military is the biggest gang in the country. They are a gang. They're just sanctioned by the government. That's all, but they're still a gang. And I remember, because I had meningitis, so I couldn't join the military, so I did private security work on a military base. All I did was check IDs, and make sure the doors and gates were locked. But all of these guys described during basic training and then in advanced training where they are broken down. They're told, you're here for national security. You're here to protect your country. You're going to be asked to do things that seem wrong. But if you're a good soldier, you need to do them. I have a friend right here in town who was an Army Ranger and admitted that many of the special forces, not all of them, but the ones that initially will not cooperate in basic training, are sexually assaulted to make them conform.
Yeah, the rate of rape in the U.S. military is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's through the roof.
Yeah, it's more than prison. It's more
like
than
a prison rape, right? It's like a prison rape scenario. Yep.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Have any of you ever heard of Kay Griggs?
No.
Kay Griggs was married to a Delta Force lieutenant colonel back in the 60s and 70s. He was actually in Vietnam. And before he was suicided, he admitted to her that in basic training, they rape all Green Beret recruits in basic training. And she put out a set of documentary films on that. You can find them at a lot of Patriot websites. And he told her a lot of stuff, including some stuff he shouldn't have. And basically, he was another one of those where he was found with a gunshot wound in the back of the head, but it's suicide. Yeah.
Now, what about what we were talking about off the air, too, about the how they had death?
Suicide classes and death.
Officially they call it death education. At Columbine, like I said before, and I'll reiterate, so people kind of get an idea what you're dealing with, because most people have either never heard of death education or they only have a brief overview. In death education, the idea is to get people used to dying, and it's not for when great-grandma dies or, something like that. They actually teach that you should be prepared to die at any moment, and they talk about how in death education they go into saying there's too many people on the planet, you have to be willing to sacrifice yourself so that others can live. That would be like the elite, make sure they get to stay around, but not us. And they start out by asking kids to write an essay on how they imagine themselves dying. And they go through and they make this little essay up, and then they have them lay in a coffin and close it, and they tell them to imagine themselves as being dead and where they would go and things like that. And then they have them write an essay afterwards describing, well, what was it like to be dead? Where did you go? All those kinds of things. And people describe different things depending on, their personal beliefs. Some people are New Age, and they said the aliens came, got them, and revived them. Other people said, I'm a Christian, I went to heaven. And the Satanists, I read one essay, and the kid goes, oh, I'm in hell with Satan, and we're running the whole show now, So they do some bizarre things in death education, really bizarre things. And there was an 80s 60 Minutes episode that came out with a Columbine student by the name of Tara Becker. And she was there in the 80s, and she spoke at length to 60 Minutes about death education. And one of the things they also did, besides this laying in a coffin and doing these essays, is they took them to mortuaries and sometimes, if they got permission, even to coroner's offices so they could view dead bodies.
And also, didn't Harris's T-shirt read "Natural Selection"?
Yeah, he had the lady that was the one. She was a friend of Judy Greco, and she's the one that helped with the theater and all that. And she taught world geography, and she was total New World Order. And I'll briefly interdict this so people understand where these teachers are coming from when they interact with these Columbine students. At Columbine, all of these teachers have been taught at the Aspen Institute. All of them have.
And what is that?
The Aspen Institute is run by the CIA. It's where
really?
I've been up there. That's a total go-away facility if you're not a public or private school teacher. In the Aspen Institute, you can find this in some mind control books. They actually use hypnosis on the teachers that attend there. Then they put them through these rigorous seminars where they have to imagine themselves having to teach kids in inner city and in really horrible environments. And by the time they get done, they've turned these teachers into robots too. It's not just the kids that are robots, so are the teachers. And yes, Columbine teachers are all taught at the Aspen Institute before they actually go in and start teaching.
What else were we talking about off the air, guys?
There was a lot of just strange connections. Kind of like how Obama inserts himself into local affairs. The Clintons, didn't they insert themselves into this? And going back to the tradition of Nixon inserting himself into the Manson case. Since when do presidents get involved in cases, even though they are, it is a big story and everything? Shouldn't that be left up to the local jury system and
it should be the local authorities and juries. I think Obama has a personal connection to the Ferguson thing. I think he sent the agent provocateurs down there. There's a lot of evidence coming out through We Are Change and through Alex Jones and others where the guys on the ground down there are getting video of these provocateurs that admit on camera that they're from Washington, D.C. and New York, and they were paid to come down there. In the case of Columbine, the Clintons, I think, had a very personal vested interest in Columbine because the Clintons are very anti-gun. But I will also tell you that, and it's my belief, and if the CIA comes and whacks me, I guess you'll all know when you don't hear from me again. But I will tell you very personally that I believe the Clintons themselves had some role in directing the FBI and other agencies to set up the shooting. And the reason that I know that is because the week before the Columbine shooting, Robin Anderson and Dylan Klebold took an Amtrak train to Washington, D.C. Now, get this. I went through Bill Clinton's itinerary for that week and, quote, right in his itinerary, in his archives, he, quote, says that he met with, quote, 2 Columbine students from Colorado to discuss the gun issue.
Get the hell out.
It's right in his archives. Yeah. That he met with 2 Columbine students. He doesn't name them, but he admits he met with 2 Columbine students the week before the shooting to discuss the gun issue.
But how do you know these kids took the bus?
They took the Amtrak train to Washington, D.C., and a witness who was on the train heard Robin Anderson talking about the guns that she bought for Dylan and Eric, and Dylan said, don't worry about it. They can't be traced to anybody, and even if they can, nobody's going to go to jail over this. And when the FBI interviewed her and showed her pictures of Robin Anderson and Dylan Klebold, she picked them out of the lineup of pictures.
That's a good question. How come this girl who bought the guns didn't get arrested?
Because her brother, Brian Anderson, was standing at the back doors looking outside the school, and he, quote, according to his own statement, which has retractions in it, I saw the man shooting at students, and as he was shooting, he was talking to somebody on some type of device.
Wow.
That's in his statement. He basically admits the guy had an earpiece or some kind of earwig in, but he describes him as a man, an older man. And I can guarantee you, and this is where I theorize, but you can bet on this, if Brian Anderson knew his sister was going to go down, all he had to do was tell Jeffco, hey, I saw this guy. What do you want me to do? Go back and talk to the media and tell them that it was a man and not Harrison Klebold? There was blackmail going on all over the place. It wasn't just Jefferson County or the FBI blackmailing the kids. The kids were blackmailing other kids. They were blackmailing teachers. They were blackmailing the government. I mean, excuse me, this was going on all over the place and was publicly admitted that you had all kinds of threats being made against the cops and the cops against the students. There was blackmail material everywhere. Everybody saw these guys. These guys weren't hiding in a corner and shot around a corner so nobody could see them. These morons, these adults, call them FBI, call them CIA, call them whoever you want, they were right out in the open, dressed like SWAT team or hostage rescue team members shooting. Plenty of kids saw them, and I guarantee you when they started fingering the kids saying, hey, you knew Harrison Klebold, you knew they were making bombs, it's because so many kids had lawyers in their homes when cops visited them, I can only imagine what the lawyers said, because guess what? Their statements that they made to the police on behalf of their clients fall under attorney-client privilege and can't be released to the public. But I will bet you those lawyers said, well, my client says that he saw a cop shooting. Would you like us to go to court? Would you like us to run down to the DA's office or let's go talk to the judge and see what we can do about this? You know, I can see that kind of blackmail going on.
Yeah, but not only that, if it's from the top, if Harrison Klebold were skating out of these other cases because they had juice at the DA's office, that's from the. There's no fear.
It's hard to believe that there wasn't an uproar in the whole town to try to figure out what really happened.
Yeah, but they're all defense contractors. They're all.
Yeah, I guess, you know.
Okay. Yeah, I'll explain that a little bit, and hopefully I can explain it clear enough because my cousin explained it to me who's in the FBI, and sometimes it doesn't come out clear. So if it doesn't, ask me to elaborate. But I'll give you an overview of what the Columbine community is. The Columbine is called a safe community by the CIA and the military. My cousin, the FBI, told me this. He said they have communities like this all over the United States and all over the Eastern Hemisphere, Europe, Asia, places like that. And let me describe what a safe community is. It's where people who have worked in sensitive areas of the government can go to live together without worry of infiltrators and foreigners trying to get into their lives and blackmail them and tell them, you know, like kidnap their children or do things like that. Columbine is one area. There is one out in California, north of Los Angeles. There's another one in Montana that Steve Quayle and a lot of others talk about. I mean, you can actually drive by that community. You just can't get into it because I got K-rails around it, and then the entrance has security guards. But that's a safe community, and that's actually very public. That's what these communities are, and these people all have either worked together or worked in the same agencies. And with military intelligence, like I said, it's like a secret society. It's like being a Mason or, the Illuminati or the Mafia or whatever. They all stick together. In a situation like this, maybe they were not all privy to the conspiracy, but obviously with their training, they would have figured it out pretty quick as the shooting progressed and the investigators and the media were saying, yes, there's shooters coming in this door. There's guys in face masks. There's 223 cartridges being found. They would have put it together pretty quick, and they would have figured out that their first conclusion would have been somebody was after their kids because of work they did for the government. That would have been their first conclusion.
Yeah. That reminds me of this movie. Did you ever see this movie with Warren Oates and Peter Fonda? They were bike riders, and they stumble across this town. The whole town's a nest of Satanists.
Oh yeah,
they were like
in
an
RV.
Yeah. They were in Warren Oates and Peter Fonda and with Loretta
Swit. Yeah, that's a great movie. Yeah.
And yeah, they stop in this town and they think it's a real nice town, and it is. It's one of these old towns, but the whole town is full of Satanists. And then they're trying to get out of there, and they're running for their lives.
Yeah, I've never seen that one, but I've seen other movies like that. In fact, one that is a template for Columbine is a movie called Disturbing Behavior with Katie Holmes that came out 2 years before the shooting.
Yeah. Everett Stahl is in that movie. And
yes.
Look at all the trouble he's had in his life, man. And Katie Holmes, come on, she's a brainwashed poster child. But the other one, Eric Stahl, man. He got thrown in a psych ward.
Yep. And if you've seen that movie, you know that the mentality that went on in that school, the children were all being referred to this shrink by their parents because they were troublemakers in school. They weren't getting good grades. So they created this toxic jock elite kids of the school. And then who were the outcasts that were actually the good kids? The kids were in the trench coats listening to the rock music who didn't want anything to do with these, with these mind-controlled kids over here. And it's a perfect template for Columbine. It basically predicts Columbine, and it also tells you about the social cliques in these public schools and how government and psychiatrists in our schools are full of shrinks and psychologists now, how they manipulate the behavior of these children. I mean, we've all heard the stories about where the parents can't even find out what goes on with their kids in the classroom, and the kids won't tell them, the teachers won't tell them. And at Columbine, what was the one thing the kids were worried about? They weren't really too much worried about their friends. They knew a lot of their friends escaped the school. They weren't worried about whether their parents were scared for their lives. They were worried about their teachers. They were loyal to the teachers.
Oh, really?
Oh, yes. It's sprinkled throughout the documents. And I talked to a couple of kids that said that their major concern that day was not for themselves or their friends, but their teachers. See the kind of loyalty the public schools make the children have towards them?
Get it.
And if you can get that kind of loyalty, then what kind of secrecy can you demand in return? If you can show your students in your classroom that you can be trusted with anything, then what can you do to them or in front of them or around them that they'll keep the secret?
Real quick, a couple of things now. There was a video of the cops. They had an ambulance, and they were pulling somebody by their feet, a dead body. What's the story with that?
One of the paramedics that I talked to, I got that footage, and I asked him about it, and he said that was actually one of the suspects and that they did not want that person going to the hospital. And when I talked to Jefferson County about it, they said that they knew of no such thing, but there was a couple of cases there where you're watching the news footage where they clearly had suspects down on the ground and they weren't trying to get them any kind of medical care or anything. But this kid that they took out of the ambulance was dressed completely in black, and they had paramedics have those towels, those white towels. They had it draped over his face so the media couldn't see his face. And they took him out of the ambulance and took him back to I don't know, today we would probably consider them MRAPs, and it was a police vehicle that had a big shell on the back of it, and they put him in that.
Now, what about the kid? They took a kid out of the school in handcuffs.
Yep, that was Chris Morris.
He was one of them.
Yeah. Well, Chris Morris was on the roof of the school. He had a South Park T-shirt on, and that picture I sent you of the guy on the roof with the mask over his head, that's Chris Morris, because if you blow the picture up in Photoshop, you can see the South Park characters on the shirt. And not only that, but people saw him shooting a gun with a red strap over his shoulder, and the guy on the roof you see with the face mask has a gun with a red strap over his shoulder.
And what about the kids? There's about 4 kids that were in a car that pulled up. They were wearing camouflage pants.
Yeah, that was the Splatterpunks, and there was actually 3 of them.
Okay.
They may have had somebody else in the car with them, but they officially list 3 of them. What was really odd about these guys was that they claimed to have heard about the Columbine shooting, but it wasn't on radio or TV yet. And they claimed that's where they heard it was on TV, but the TV news hadn't even started running it yet. And these were break-offs from the Trenchcoat Mafia when they had actually been Columbine High School students and had been thrown out of school for having drugs on school property. And so they had gone to another high school, but they formed their own group that was associated with the Trenchcoat Mafia, and that was the Splatterpunks.
Now, were any guns found in that car?
Not that I know of, not that they have admitted, but they only said that they did a cursory glance at the vehicle that these kids came in, and they never mention either way. They never say did they find guns or did they not. They never mention it.
And then what about, were any of these kids relatives? They had relatives that were cops or sheriff's department.
The Splatterpunks, their parents are never interviewed, so no one knows what their parents are or were at the time.
Okay.
But now Chris Morris's mom was a police officer in Lakewood.
See?
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I keep hearing. Because I met a guy. He was either he worked on the case as a PI, or as a cop down there, and he talked about all this stuff. And he said, man, they were all related to cops. And and he mentioned those 4 kids, the 3 kids, and all that. What about movies like Elephant?
I did not get a chance to see that movie, so you would probably have to describe it to me so I could get an idea.
It was a Gus Van Sant movie.
Yeah.
Trying to depict, it actually was based on Columbine, and they have the kids playing the first-person shooter games. But Gus Van Sant had also done one that was similar to the Kurt Cobain movie, where he did like a blending of it's like semi-based on the story. And in the movie, the kid does make a point to try to avoid certain teachers or go after certain teachers. They put elements of it in there, but it's another thing that sort of muddles the facts of the whole thing.
Okay. Yeah, I can't believe I missed one of his movies. And the problem is that I got so burned out on Columbine. Everybody had a documentary or a film or a book, and I'm like, guys, I have to stick to the physical evidence. I have to keep after the victims and witnesses, and people are like, oh, you got to watch this movie. So, I apologize if, I'm not up on the movies, but they really burned me out on that, around 2002, 2003. And I was like, guys, I can't watch anymore. My eyes are killing me. I've got, 4 or 5 banker boxes of physical evidence. And, so I always try to apologize to people that were trying to offer me movies and everything, but that's probably why I didn't see it. I was really burned out on the movies and stuff.
Yeah, that one was after the fact, and it was way later, so that it was another one that sort of, like muddled the story. So if you weren't up on it at the time and you looked at it, it was sort of like Bowling for Columbine, kind of obfuscated a little bit. But there was some that happened before and during. There was Heathers with Winona Ryder, and then Christian Slater, who comes in with a black trench coat, and their goal at the end is to blow up the school. And then there was another one, the Basketball Diaries.
Basketball Diaries, yeah.
Basketball Diaries, I remember that one.
Leonardo DiCaprio, man.
Yep.
Definitely.
In a trench coat.
Yeah.
Not in the novel. In the novel, he just shoots the gun up in the air. So they actually changed that part in the movie to reflect it, or to make it more like, a predictive programming type of a...
Right, and that's what I was going to say, predictive programming. That's a lot of what they do in the movie industry. It's one of the things that I found the 2 years I spent out there in Hollywood. Most people don't know this, but most of your studio heads are either ex-CIA or ex-Israeli Mossad.
Oh, absolutely.
Yep.
Yep, they were.
I met a few when I delivered equipment from my mother-in-law to the studios. I got to meet a couple of these guys because they always schmoozed with her because she was really good looking, and they were always trying to date her and stuff. And we'd sit down and talk, and they would go into their background and say, oh, yeah, I was in CIA during the Vietnam era, or, I was in Israeli Mossad and I decided to come to America. And I'm like, what? Why would you guys leave jobs to come out here and do this? And then I started studying predictive programming and things like that. And I'm like, there we go.
Yeah, all those old war propaganda films, even going back to, oh my God, the most famous, John Wayne.
Yep.
And, plenty of others, but it never changed. And what happens is if you want movies like Battleship, where you want to be able to use authentic, hardware, and, you want military equipment, and you want the financing, Michael Bay, all those Transformers movies, that's how they get their funding. And
Eric Stahl's in there.
I didn't hear you. Who?
Eric Stahl is in Transformers.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eric Stahl.
Yeah.
I don't know him.
No, Shia LaBeouf's in Transformers.
Nick Stahl, you mean?
Yeah, Nick Stahl. Yeah.
He was in Terminator.
Terminator, I'm thinking. I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. Terminator.
Yeah, that's where their budgets come from.
Yeah.
And then you'll see people like Clooney and Angelina Jolie and stuff, and then they're members of, you know, CFR, UN and stuff, and then they go and they hype, they get arrested at embassies, and, you know, they hype Coney 2012, and, you know, they do different little favors here and there. And then, you know, they play quasi politicians and you know, public relations, psyops.
Yeah. Well, you know, while we're on the topic of Hollywood and its connections to psyops and predictive programming, I'll give you a little tidbit about what I found down at Columbine, was that Daryl Scott, the father of Rachel Scott, had a big connection not only to evangelical churches because he was an evangelical priest, but he also spent a lot of time in Hollywood and knew a lot of directors and Hollywood actors. And you won't believe who he had staying at the house with him before, during, and for a few weeks after the Columbine shooting. Dana Plato, the former actress from
really?
Yeah. He had her stand there. He was interviewed about it because people say that they saw her supposedly, and this was a couple of students who made the statement, they saw her speeding away from Columbine High School after dropping Rachel Scott and two other girls off at the school. Now, Daryl Scott's admitted that Rachel Scott and Dana Plato were actually very good friends. He denies that Dana Plato ever went anywhere near Columbine High School before, during, or after the shooting. But isn't it coincidental that she ends up in Oklahoma and she dies that summer in her motorhome and her husband doesn't call for help for hours?
You know what's funny about that? She was on the Howard Stern show the day before she died.
Yes. Yeah. Yep, I got that interview. Yeah.
Yeah, and she was saying she was clean and sober, and, you know, she reconnected with her adopted mother, or the mother that gave her up, and she seemed good and healthy. And then, boom, next day she's dead.
Yeah.
It didn't end well for any of those kids on that show, unfortunately.
No, the little kid, Gary Coleman, he moved to Denver, and he lived in Highlands Ranch, and he worked at Caboose Hobbies, and he went home one night after working, and they found him in his home dead. I can't remember what it was he's had since birth, but it caused him, huh?
Right, they kept him small. That he had problems, and his parents probably. His girlfriend took pictures of him instead of calling 911.
Yeah.
That was living with her, his wife, because whoever she was, you know, related to him. You know, instead of trying to help him, she was worried about getting tabloid photos of him to sell.
Yeah. Yep.
And then Todd Bridges, of course, admitted on Wendy Williams' show that he had been molested by his manager. And, you know, that he...
Well, also, too, Todd Williams, Bridges used to talk about how the cops were targeting him, you know, and he got off, it was like involved in a shootout with the cops, and he got off, you know, so that had to be going on. You know.
He was selling drugs at one point on the street.
No, yeah, he was definitely heavily involved in drugs, but...
Got reduced to, you know...
Johnny Cochran got him out of that.
Wow.
Yeah, Johnny...
I got another tidbit that connects to Hollywood about Columbine.
Good.
Did anybody ever see Sharon Stone's comment about Columbine High School?
Yeah, go ahead.
She said, and I can't remember what show she's on. I got it here on one of my DVDs. She said, I want to know what adult trained those kids, gave them guns, gave them booze, and told them to go murder people in the name of Hitler. And 2 days later, she was found unconscious in her home with a bruise on the back of her head, and the media tried to portray it as she had some kind of brain aneurysm that she'd had all her life and didn't know it. But she clearly told the media afterward, quote, I was walking in the door of my home, it was dark, and I suddenly felt something hard hit me in the back of the head.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And, you know, I've already exposed the name of the guy. Did we actually do that on the show tonight?
No, go ahead.
The name of the guy is Nate Marshall. He's a former West Metro firefighter and an undercover ATF officer who now works down in Albuquerque trying to get kids stirred up to do a school shooting down there. I've got a picture of him shooting a gun from the library window. I sent it to Ed. If you take it into Photoshop or any good quality video editing program, use the magnifying glass, blow it up. And instead of seeing Eric Harris like they tell you, you see a man with a mustache, stocky build, with a badge on his white dress shirt and patches on his shoulder, shooting a semi-automatic rifle from the window. And I got that directly from Jefferson County when they released the photos. That comes from them, their evidence.
Yeah, it's just incredible, man.
When you talk to the sheriff about all this stuff, or then, what is his reaction to all this information?
I believe that John Stone was probably not involved in this because he had a horrible conscience about this. He made it very clear there's things he couldn't talk about, but there's things he did talk to me about because he wanted to make them public. Today, he's dying of cirrhosis of the liver. The Columbine shooting made him a complete alcoholic. Mm-hmm. Now, his underlyings are total jerks. Lieutenant Kike Bush, Neil Gardner, some of the other deputies, they almost were like, this shooting had to happen. It needed to happen. And, and they were there to take care of it. And, and Harrison Klebold were just these little...
It had to happen. It needed to happen.
That's what Neil Gardner said. He said that to the media, said, well, this had to happen. And it's like, yeah, because you were following Eric Harris and wouldn't report to your superiors on what he was really doing. In fact, Neil Gardner actually admitted first to, I think it was Diane Sawyer, he said that he didn't even know who Eric Harris was. And she goes, now, wait a minute, you're a cop working undercover, and you're told to follow Eric Harris, but now you tell me that you don't know what he looks like and you don't know his name. How could you be following a kid that you don't know who he is? And he didn't have an answer to that. And then he goes on the local media, tells Adele Arakawa, well, the shooting had to happen. And she asked him what he meant. And he says, because of the dynamic in this community, because of the anger and the hurt and all that, there was no way that this was not going to happen. Now, what do you think he means by that?
And the video games. Now what about the civil lawsuits?
The civil lawsuits were never going to go anywhere because they never, well, first of all, they filed them in federal court, and there's a law that says that you have to exhaust your local options first at the state district level when you are suing a government agency. You can't just automatically go to federal court. So the federal judge walks in, he gets handed this docket, he takes one look at it, and he says, the district court needs to handle this, but he says, let's go ahead and listen to it. And they immediately brought in the anti-gun and drug people. These people were not professional witnesses, but the families brought them in. One person they brought in was Ann Blake Tracy, and she immediately said it was Savoy Pharmaceuticals and Luvox that caused Columbine. She goes, we want this and this. And he says, wait a minute, ma'am, he says, what are your qualifications? Well, back in the years when I was younger, they had put me on these drugs after I was divorced, so I know how people react to these drugs. And he says, well, you're kind of a little bit of a biased witness. He says, do you work with these people in any professional manner? Do you try to counsel people on these psych drugs? And she goes, no, I have written a few books and put up a website. And he goes, I have to depose you. He says, you can't be a witness in this case. And then they brought in John DeCamp from Nebraska.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, they had John DeCamp, the families did. And he immediately started comparing Columbine to what happened up there. And he says, well, the boys were sexually abused and all that. And that's true. But the problem is you can't tell a federal judge that because that's not even what the parents were suing for. They were suing for the Jefferson County Sheriff's Department, and the school district knew Harris and Klebold were dangerous and did nothing to prevent them from carrying out their attack. But yet the parents brought in these buffoons that couldn't even, stick to the evidence. They went off on all these tangents. So the judge threw it out. And then it went back to state district court, and then they shored themselves up. They brought in a private investigative team. They brought in lawyers and did it the way they should. But even so, and as I argue, I don't like these psych meds either, but you talk to any gambler in Vegas or you talk to any accountant who knows how to crunch numbers, or knows algorithms, ask yourself how many people do shootings that are on these psych drugs and then compare that to how many are on them. The number is so small, you are never going to convince an MD or a jury or a judge that these drugs are the primary evidence of why these kids are doing this. It just won't happen.
So were any of these lawsuits successful? Did he make any money or no?
No. Jefferson County finally said that they would go ahead and settle out of court as long as they didn't have to admit blame, and they would pay for the funerals and they would pay for any counseling that needed to be done. But they never admitted guilt, and they never actually paid through a court settlement at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Even the Jeffrey Fieger case?
Fieger, I had talked to him a couple of times.
Okay.
And the problem with Fieger is that, he was listening to too many of these local patriot militia types. And he was getting off on tangents, and, he was going down the road of, could we possibly look at this as though maybe the cops involved in the shooting had a personal agenda, and that's why they, didn't react as strongly as they should to stopping Harrison Klebold. And when the judge started hearing this, that was it. He was gone.
Right.
He was gone. The family said, bye, go away. We don't need any more of that. So yeah, the lawsuits they ran up against a brick wall. They got smacked hard. Every single one of them. Even the one on Dave Sanders, where the available eyewitness testimony clearly shows that he was left in the school to die. Even that lawsuit didn't go anywhere.
Yeah, because his injuries were not life-threatening, man.
No, not at that point.
Yeah.
No. But we discussed this before, and I'll say it again. When you leave a person to die like that, and you're a law enforcement officer, you can't tell me that you're just quote making a decision in the heat of the moment or in a moment of combat. Because the fact is, they took other people out that were injured. They had a kid that had been shot in both legs with a small caliber 9mm, and they picked him up, 2 cops did, and carried him between them. They could have done the same thing to Dave Sanders.
Right, but like you said, that one of the kids who wasn't even supposed to be there in the building was in the room with him.
Yep, and he was accused of being a shooter, and not only that, but they found evidence on his computer that he had intentions on killing his sister and his parents after Columbine was done.
Oh, really?
That was admitted publicly. That came out during the lawsuits when the parents sent investigators through the community looking at these kids. I kind of tagged along with some of these guys, and they were flabbergasted. They couldn't believe what they were finding. These kids were openly on their computers threatening their siblings, their parents, the school, and not one charge was ever brought against any of them.
Oh, boy. All right, we're getting down to the last 10 minutes.
Also, some connections, just because he always brings it up, is that Dr. Bill Deagle always mentions that he was the doctor on scene.
Oh, God. If there are aliens and they want to abduct somebody, I really wish they would abduct him and take him back to their planet. This planet can do without Deagle. I talked to every paramedic and doctor down there, and Deagle was never on any list. He worked for the Denver Fire Department doing physicals. That's what he did. And by the way, I've got the documents in my possession that show that he was defrocked as a doctor here in Colorado for overprescribing OxyContin to people that he knew had drug habits.
Man. Eagle's out there, man. Let me tell you, he's out there.
Thing that I could have gone in so many different directions on, but I've just kind of let you speak because you're really good at knowledgeable. I just wanted to throw that out there because I knew that would be a good piece of meat to go at.
Yeah, thanks. He drove me nuts. He basically threatened me at one of his meetings. I was talking about Columbine. I was up before he was to talk, and I spoke about the other suspects and all that. And when I was walking away from the podium, he pointed his finger at me, and he goes, "You're not a real Christian, and you better watch out." He says, "This government has it in for all of us." And he says, "I guarantee you, you're going to be one of the first ones to go." And I was like, whoa, what is that? Wow. And then he gets up there and he says, "I'm not going to talk about Columbine tonight. I'm going to talk about Jesus Christ." That lasted about 2 minutes, and then he started talking about how he was the first doctor on the scene and that he knew that they were involved, but he never said who they were. He just kept saying he knew they were involved and they weren't Harrison Klebold. And he's easy to dissect because he gives you all this stuff about his medical background. Trust me, 90% of that crap on his website is BS. He does not have specialties in that, because you can look that up through the state that he has a medical license through, and they will tell you what his specialties are. And he's only got like 1 or 2 specialties, not the 20 or so that he claims.
Right.
But William, you do seminars and stuff too?
I used to, yeah.
Okay. Where do you live now?
I live in Brighton. I'm about 20 miles north of Denver.
Okay. Because I want to start putting some stuff together too.
Hey, William, quick question.
Sure.
While you're here, you were talking about those safe towns. Those safe towns.
Yes.
Do you think that Newtown, Connecticut, would qualify as one of those safe towns?
Sure, it would. I mean, everybody there is involved in the Nickelodeon network, and we all remember Amanda Bynes, the actress that went nuts, who was on Nickelodeon, who claims that she was not only raped by her father, but raped by producers there. And Nickelodeon has the highest incidence of pedophilia convictions. Many of their producers were either convicted while working on the set of a show of sexually abusing or inappropriately touching children, or they came from another job after they were convicted of it. Go look it up. Nickelodeon, I mean, that's pedophile heaven over there. And guess where Nickelodeon is housed? Newtown, Connecticut. That's their main offices.
Really? I had no idea about that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you got to work in the film industry like I do to know that. I just call up one of my friends in Hollywood and say, where do these bums live, or where do they work? Oh, yeah, they're here, or they're there.
Well, I know Susan Collins is from Newtown, the woman who wrote Hunger Games.
Yep.
Okay.
And also the Dark Knight too.
Well, we can do a whole Sandy Hook show, but now I got a question from the chat room. Now, what about the South Park guys? I remember Matt Stone was interviewed in Michael Moore's film, and then they claimed that Moore misused the interview in the film, so they included a very unflattering portrayal of Moore in Team America. And then it talks about Dallas Goldbug. You're
saying the 2 guys were there.
Oh, Dallas Goldbug. Oh, yeah. I've visited his website. I don't know if he's an ex-psych patient or whether he's looking for attention to create his own celebrity gossip website or what. I have no idea what to make of that guy yet.
Well, I tell you this, man. Some of his stuff is okay, but when I tried to invite him on the show and talk to him like a normal person, and he started saying I was one of the Backstreet Boys. I'm a Backstreet Boy, and I posted the pictures. I'm like 20 years older than this Backstreet Boy. He says I am.
We're the creators of South Park.
Right. Now, the creators of South Park, I was in the same acting workshop as those guys were, but they were in a different office than where I was. So I never met them except for once, and we never really had a talk. So I never heard them say they went to Columbine. I know some people have said that they believe they did, or they said they did. The time that I heard them speaking about Columbine, they were offering their condolences, and they never said it there, and I never talked to them after the workshop, so I can't confirm whether they went to Columbine or not, because I never had any dealings with them after the workshop.
No, they didn't. They didn't go to Columbine at all.
Okay, because I know somebody was on earlier that thought that they did, and I'm like, I don't remember them ever saying that they did.
Matt Stone did the interview in Bowling for Columbine, and it might have been heavily edited, and that's why they did the unflattering portrayal of Michael Moore in Team America, is what I think they were getting at in the chat room.
Right.
Okay.
Right, and I know there were after Bowling for Columbine, I'm amazed that Michael Moore didn't, end up somewhere in a ditch with a baseball bat skull fracture upside his head. He made so many people mad with that. People were just really disgusted with the guy. I mean, he did great. Everybody liked that, but then he goes off the deep end, with this current stuff, and people are like, where are you coming from,
Well, he even tried to tie in Oklahoma City. And,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you're going to the problem I had with him was that he was trying to do like a parody with this whole Columbine thing. There is a connection between Oklahoma City and Columbine. It's very simple, and
sure.
That the investigators who worked on the Oklahoma City investigation came from the Columbine area and the Denver Regional FBI and ATF office.
Oh, really?
And their children went to school down there at Columbine. So, in a way there is a connection, but just not Michael Moore's connection.
Right, he tried to parody it. That's what I agree. I was agreeing with you in saying, right, he tried to make a parody joke out of the whole thing.
Yeah.
All right, we got about 3 minutes left in the show, and then I want to make a little announcement after the show. So what do you want to leave us with, William, that we didn't touch on tonight?
The aspect that I want to touch on, it's a good thing to go out with, was that a few years after Columbine, I was contacted by a lady who does research into mind control, and she said, "Have you ever heard of Operation Open Eyes?" And I said, "No." And so I started looking it up on the internet, and I found a book at Amazon, and a shrink claims that Operation Open Eyes was a CIA operation he was involved in, and the operation dealt with American school children here and abroad who were on military bases abroad going to foreign schools. And he said the idea of Operation Open Eyes was to open children up to new experiences, including globalism, and that they were becoming global citizens. And one of the things he said that they did was that they did what he called light psychological torture on these kids. And he didn't mention Columbine, but he said that they had a big operation in Colorado in the 80s and 90s.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Okay, well, we're down to the last couple of minutes. I definitely want to invite you back again, William. You have a ton of information here to share. There's some Facebook groups I want to invite you to as well.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that off the air. Great information by William Zabel. Now, on the blog, the Opperman Report, I got a link to William's blog and stuff like that. And he even has his phone number on there. You want your phone number on there, William?
Oh yeah, I've always had
okay.
I've always had everyone call me. I don't mind. Yeah, I don't.
I'll
mind.
call you. I'll call you.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Good. But Mike, call him. Okay, leave me alone. Especially the first 5 minutes of the show. But his email is birdman2219@comcast.net. His website is thephantomchasers.org. And I'll put out your number there, man. 720-518-1215 to contact William Zabel. Fascinating guy. Thank you so much, man. We definitely we got to come back here and revisit Columbine again. Okay.
Oh yeah, because there's much more. Like I said, I've got a JFK library here of stuff. All physical evidence, all eyewitness statements, every bit of it comes right out of the government archives. Some of it is stuff that I personally went over there and got, an interview with a man who claims he was in jail with Eric Harris, and that Eric Harris was still in jail on the 20th. That's why he couldn't have been involved.
Wow. Okay, there's a ton of stuff we have to come back to. Yeah.
So was that his body then, there in the school?
Nobody knows. Nobody knows. The couple of people that escaped the library didn't recognize it as him.
Wow. Wow is right.
And also remember, not only were the autopsies sealed, but then they were released. I can tell you that they were highly edited, and then on top of that, Harris and Klebold were buried in unknown locations where they wouldn't tell anybody where the families buried them.
So it's possible they're still alive.
Well, an FBI agent in New York says they are. She filed a 302 statement with their supervisor saying they were still alive at least of May of 1999.
Yeah, very interesting. And if we don't know where they're buried, that gives a lot of credibility to that as well.
Yeah, well, a girl that...
Word for it.
Yeah, well, a girl who was in math class with Eric Harris said that a full year after the Columbine shooting, she received an email from him, and she knew it was him because he described things about their relationship that nobody outside the school or investigators knew, so she knew it had to be him.
Wow.
Wait, who got the email?
A girl that knew Eric Harris, Kristen, trying to think of the last name, Kristen Adams, Kristen Amora, or something like that. Like I said, I got it in the papers here. I'll have to look. I remember her first name is Kristen, but I can't remember her last name. She made a statement to the FBI, and then she went out on the Internet and told everybody that Eric Harris had contacted her.
And then she made an effort to trace that email back or look at the IP address or anything like that?
No, she let the FBI do it, and they said, quote, in their follow-up to her statement, they believe that somebody was just because they traced it back to a kid who supposedly had known psychological problems back east, and so they dismissed it. But they never give the kid's name. They never say whether they talked to him in person or over the phone or anything like that. So anything is possible with things like that. You know, when they don't investigate properly, how can we take their word for it?
Yeah, and it seems like every roadblock, every dead end is at the FBI in this case. You know, the investigators are the ones that are kind of covering things up.
Yeah.
Oh, boy. Okay, well, we had tonight William Zabel from, am I pronouncing your name right, Zabel?
It can be pronounced that way, or Zabel, or Zabel. I mean, There's 3 different pronunciations for it, so, yeah.
Okay, well, William Zabel. And we had on tonight, too, Christian Wallace and Mike Gray called up to help us out. Definitely we're going to be revisiting this issue, for sure, but also other things, too, like this. I'd like to get into this Panama stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you know, there's a lot of stuff. And also, you know, Sandy Hook. We're going to do Sandy Hook shows as well, too. So I want to thank my guests tonight. Next week we have coming up Neil Sanders. We're going to be talking about mind control. And then we have Catherine McDonald, the wife of Jeffrey McDonald. She's going to be coming on. We have her scheduled as well. And then Peter Dale Scott is coming on, who's going to be talking to us about his work, all kinds of stuff about he's a professor, and stuff about how the oil companies are ripping us off and stuff like that, and along those lines. So I'm gonna drop you guys, but we might do a little after show, little conference if you want. But I just want to make a little statement, a little announcement during the after show. But thank you all, and we'll be back next week at this time here. We'll be on all these stations here, CJ Mars and Hazy and Awake and all those guys. So thank you guys. If you want to come back on for a little chat, because I know I'm going to bring Ann on after this, we can talk for a little while here.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Okay.